Your Excellencies, heads of state and government, distinguished guests, dear friends, welcome to the Doha Forum's closing session, which begins with a final panel discussion, and it couldn't be a better one. The title of the session is Prospects for Cooperation in a Fragmented World. And as you've heard over the last 2 days, we have been engaging in a lot of dialogue and constructive discussions about the state of the world today, and however one might try to spin the reality in a positive way, the truth is we live in a world that is increasingly polarized. Divisions between and among and within nations abound. They've always been there, you might argue, but perhaps never as glaringly obvious or deep as they seem to be today. Yet despite these deepening divisions, there is today, it seems, a new willingness on the part of some nations to find innovative ways forward. On the part of others, it's a new imperative. There is no alternative but to try to find creative, new, untested ways and approaches to enhance global cooperation and security in order to deal with the many challenges that we all face, whether we live in the global north or the global south. And it isn't just climate change and new technologies and pandemics, but the international system itself, which seems to be broken. How do we fix the significant damage that has been done over the last year and more to our global institutions and their ability or inability to uphold international law and deliver equal justice for all, and above all, to bring accountability in order to avert the next major war, in order to resolve some of the long-festering, lingering conflicts out there. It is my pleasure now to invite our distinguished panelists, starting with His Excellency Luis Abinader, President of the Dominican Republic. It's also my pleasure to invite Her Excellency Željka Cvijanović, Chairperson of the Presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And last but not least, His Excellency Mustafa Madbouli, Prime Minister of the Republic of Egypt. And please welcome the moderator of this session, Steve Clemens, host of The Bottom Line on Al Jazeera English.
Can we just say a big round of applause for Gita Fakhri, who's been here at every moment.
So much.
What an incredible job she has done.
Thank you.
Thank you for getting us launched. Okay, we're the final session. And I have to tell you, this title, Prospects for Cooperation in a Fragmented World, I don't know if it does it for me. I want to be a realist, and I want to start out, as we kind of get into this in a moment with our wonderful panel. You know, my Nixonian realism would make me rewrite this as prospects for more fragmentation in a world that has forgotten how to cooperate. And so I want to start with that as we look at the news, and would love to start with Prime Minister Madbouli on what's happened in your neighborhood. We've now seen a revolution in Syria. An Islamic group seems to have taken over the country. How do you feel about that?
Okay, thank you very much. And I would like, of course, to start by expressing my gratitude to the convener of this forum and highlight that it is my honor and pleasure to speak alongside such distinguished speakers and on this panel, which includes, of course, some of the most well-renowned world leaders and change makers. And of course, the title, as you mentioned, Steve, it's really challenging one, especially with what
well,
has
how would you rewrite the title?
It's, I can say it's now or never to try to really be committed to all this nice label of cooperation, justice, and sustainability, because words is not enough, and pretending that you are acting based on these principles is not enough. It's the time now to seriously, really be committed to implement all of these principles that being advocated all over the world, but without serious action to implement it on the ground, which has resulted in a lot of negative spillover that is now affecting every single place in the world.
Well, let me take this, because I know that we're doing this panel a little differently than some are, and starting out with a conversation, and I want to encourage you all to respond to each other. But it seems to me that the challenge is one of how we lost cooperation, or how we lost a smoothness in global affairs. If you think back to what globalization was supposed to be, Tom Friedman writing that we were all going to kind of evolve to be the same, that we had a lot of connectivity, and you thought about the movement of people and ideas and money and institutions was supposed to move more frictionlessly in a higher and higher trust world. It seems to me, and we have a lot of people in the business in this audience, we have a ton of connectivity in the world, but we have a lot of fear. It's a high fear globalization where walls are coming back up. So, Madam President, you may be in Bosnia and Herzegovina one of the few places, I don't know why you ever leave the country, because you have global affairs at home. You have 3 peoples and 2 nations to work with constantly in your space. And I'd love to just kind of get some insights from you about what the rest of the world can learn from how you're holding together one of the tensest and most complicated governments in the world.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, of course. Speaking about Bosnia, it is composed of 2 entities and 3 constituent peoples, and it by itself actually speaks a lot, and we should know that it is complicated to reach agreement, to reach consensus, you know, but at the same time it's a good practice, I would say, for all of us. And I would say that others could learn a lot, although I would be honest to say that it's very difficult to reach consensus on many important issues. The fact that I come from the presidency, which is tripartite presidency, composed of 3 members who act on equal terms, and now I'm kind of chairperson, you know, for the 8 months, and we have this rotation on 8 months basis. Also
so this is your last month in 8 months?
So this is my second, like, you know, 8 months, because I have 2 more years, like, you know, in the presidency. But, you know, that shows actually that, the country is fragmented, you know, otherwise we would have 1 president, you know. So we have 3 presidents, 3 members of the presidency, which means that it's necessary actually to make agreements, and it's necessary to have constant dialogue. This is something like, you know, which is not going always very smoothly, but, you know, this is something which gives us a lot of practice and a lot of opportunities to practice how to reach agreement and how to put things through dialogue instead of forcing, like, you know, one or the other side. So this could be a good example, maybe, actually showing that, you know, it's possible to function that way. But at the same time, I understand that there are a lot of challenges globe-wide nowadays, like, you know, but the world has always been fragmented, if we want to be honest. It's not only this, like, you know, unique situation nowadays. Now we can see that more visibly. It's more visible now because of the, like, you know, social media and other things, but also because of the discussions worldwide, which is something, you know, that we can have on a daily basis as a kind of common news, you know. But, you know, the world has always been fragmented. Now, the question is whether those instruments that would help overcome fragmentation are still in place, or whether we need to recover some of these instruments. For instance, if we speak about global organization, that is UN, does it function in the proper way, actually, to, you know, take up all these challenges? We speak about adherence to the international law. So who are those who disrespect, you know, international law? Now we should know who they are, and actually to see what the cases are, what examples are. If we speak that it's necessary to have dialogue, who are those who do not want to participate in any dialogue, you know? If we speak about elimination of double standards policy, then we should speak, you know, and say, or ask ourselves, who are those who promote double standards policy, you know? So now the question is actually how open we are in addressing these issues, and not to turn a blind eye and say, like, you know, okay, there is something happening and we will see what we are going to do tomorrow. No, we need to tackle these issues nowadays. But as I said, like, you know, I think that they are more visible today than they used to be before. But, you know, coming from a complex country, I understand actually how difficult it is to put things through a dialogue, how difficult it is to navigate the situation, which is kind of having a lot of burdens, and things like that. But if there is dialogue, if there is goodwill, if there is adherence to the international law, then okay. And my country is based, and its existence is based on international law, which is Dayton Accords.
It sounds like you live in a world of a lot of litigation, and that's a nightmare to me, but I'm glad you're doing well in it. I want to jump to, in a moment, to President Abinader, but before I get there, one of the other, I think, underlying assumptions of this conference, of this forum, this magnificent forum around innovation, is there's a kind of a notion that we can be proactive in tackling some of these big transnational problems and challenges out there. And I really appreciate the Prime Minister's realism here that it's very tough. But I'm just wondering whether or not, as in Bosnia and Herzegovina, we need a few big crises out there to remind the world of how much cooperation is needed in climate or migration or other form, AI or disasters. But let me jump to President Abinader, as I'm just, you probably have the easiest of the governances here. So let me make it tough. But if you're going to guide the rest of the world in thinking about things like climate, or the fact that if you talk to the UN Commission for High Commission for Refugees, the most displaced people ever in world history has encountered, you begin looking at these problems of climate or concerns about geopolitical tensions. What's going to tame the system to kind of move in a better track? Because if you look over the last 20 years, we're not succeeding very well.
When you ask your first question, Steve, about how should be the name of this forum, I would say we should be optimistic. Because, as the President was saying, there all the time in history there has been differences. But there has been always a leader during that time that could unify it all. And it's a cliche, but we have to say this again. We have to work with the things that unite and not that the thing that difference and that not unite us. And this is not that difficult. I think that also to try to get into an arrangement, we have to work, we have to be prepared for that. We have to know our objective, we want to know where we are going internally in our countries or externally when we deal with another countries. And also we have to remind the leaders that what our people want, what our country want, are efficient leaders. Leaders that can develop, that they can have more in their table, that they can have, their families can live better, that they can develop and the country can grow. And for that, you have to cooperate. You have to do cooperation internally, you have to do cooperation externally. And I know it's not that easy, but you have to insist, you have to have a plan, you have to prepare, but you also have to know the objective of the order that you are sitting. If the objective of the orders are X, you cannot do Y.
Does that work in a world where the biggest topographical change in the world is rising strident nationalism, and I would use my own country in that case, pugnacious nationalism, make America great again? Does that system work in a world where not only the United States but many other countries are kind of going deeper into a deeper nationalism? Does cooperation still flourish?
I think yes, because you have to explain what has made America a great country. It has been the cooperation. It has been also even the migration.
Have you talked to Donald Trump lately and told him that?
I will talk to him. But
you will talk.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think there is a way to do it. I think there is a way to that you can understand. It's not easy. It's not something that will go from one day to the other. But I think that we'll have to insist. There is no other way. There is no other way to try. But also we have to make the interpretation of what you really want or how you want to get there. And also it's the narrative. The narrative, what people are on this is a new world with the social media. And everybody goes and without any filter goes and says what they want or what they feel. And sometimes what the people see on the social media is not really the feeling of what people are or what is the majority wants. But this is the feeling what the ones that are most active are saying or are promoting on the social media. We have to insist, I think, there are much more things that tie us together than what divide us. I think that the world, when it has come together, when it has cooperated, is when you see more growth, economic growth, when you see that the living standards goes high.
Right.
And that's the history. And I think also you have to remind that to the people, to all the people in the United States, in China, in Russia, in Europe, in Latin America, all over the world.
Right.
I think you have to insist, and you have to also to have a more positive information and narrative on the social media and on the communication in general.
So, Mr. Prime Minister, let me come back to you and your neighborhood, which is such a complicated one. And you were appointed Prime Minister by President Sisi in 2018. So in the 6 years that you've been there, wow, what a period of time you've kind of looked at. You've sort of seen, of course, the aftermath of October 7th and the Hamas attack against Israel, and the response since, and the nightmare, in my view, that is happening in Gaza as we watch on our cell phones and whatnot. And we've seen now Lebanon shaken, Syria fall. Egypt has been very clear that if refugees end up over the line, that this would drive a potential military response from you. So I'm just interested in how you come back to any semblance or what you think is required in this. And I want you to tell me who the white hats and the black hats are. Who are the villains right now that are impeding greater cooperation within your neighborhood? Tell me which ones you like. Which leaders do you like in your neighborhood? And which don't you like?
No. It's not, I think, it's about leadership. It's about what is the root causes for what is happening in our region. Let's confess and let's admit. It's the non-implementation of the two-state solution. You cannot anticipate a region with this historical crisis of that the Palestinian is lacking their right to have their own states.
Was that a US failure?
I think it's the world failure. It's not only the United States failure. It's the whole global system that has failed to implement these basic rights for this country, the Palestinian. Because here, this is what I think what Her Excellency was mentioning. Here it's a very clear manifestation of double standards in our region, that there is very clear case and nobody is serious about solving this problem, and imagine that its spillover will always be away from affecting them. But let's admit, with what is happening, everybody will be affected. Europe, United States, and even Asia, everybody will be affected with this. If it is not now, it will happen afterwards. If you are speaking now about the problem of refugees, because the turbulence that has taken place in the region, let's see what's taking place now in Europe. And why now a lot of right-wing parties are winning elections in Europe, and they are resisting the whole principle of absorbing and living with others, and now they are against migration and all the problem and turbulence that's taking place because of migrants who came mainly from this region. Again, the root causes of all of this happening is this case, mainly this case, the Palestinian case, and how it has affected the whole region. We have to see what's happening now, as you mentioned.
I want to get other
Lebanon, Syria, and others.
Sure,
more
I want
or
to
less.
get other perspectives on this, but I want to ask you, in short form, do you believe Israel is engaged in genocide against Palestinians in Gaza?
I think what has happened in in Gaza, it was really something that everybody knows very well. It is not defending yourself against terrorism. It's a sort of collective punishment of innocent people and civilian because an act of a group, Hamas group, and because of this, now we have more than 45,000 killed, with more than 110,000 injured and lost their life. How do you describe this? I'm just asking you. This is what something that we have to see how this is something I think that everybody has described it, that this is not something justice or fair or whatever. But what is the reaction of the world against this?
Let me ask you both, Madam President, as you look at these crises, and we're now beginning to see the interconnectedness of them, Russia and Ukraine. You met, as I understand it, Foreign Minister Lavrov here and thanked Russia for its role in your constitution and others, but Russia is a complicated entity for many nations in the world and is looked at as one of the significant destabilizers of a sovereign government. We see the Israel-Gaza crisis going on, which is happening, and atrocities that we're seeing there. I'm just interested for those that may not be on the edge. Egypt is clearly on the edge of this, but not on the edge. What is the global collective responsibility at this moment, particularly if the big powers are not doing anything to really bring these to a close? Madam President?
It's necessary to restore diplomacy as the only tool and the only means to reach agreements. Of course, it's easy to say that, but it's difficult to implement it in practice. You know why? Because obviously there are those who think that the recipe is to have militarization of international relations instead of having clear dialogue, goodwill and, attempt, or at least goodwill to reach final agreement. That's why actually we live in a messy world. I said that we have always, the world has always been fragmented, but now it's more visible, and now something which is called rules is not something which is applied to all, and that's the main problem. And when we speak about double standards policy, it is something that affects us all. It's not only in your region, it's also in my region, it's also in my country. I have seen so many examples where, for instance, you have double standards. Something is like possible for the one, and it's not possible for the other one. So you can see these examples worldwide, so it's not kind of unique case that we speak about Middle East or whatever, the region, But when I say that we need to restore diplomacy, it means that all of us want to have kind of credible international organization which can really deal with all these problems. If it is only a battlefield where we are going to have different political ideas and clashes, then there's no real purpose for that. But if it is a place where we should actually promote, and all of us trying to put in place something which is equal practice everywhere, then it would be okay. I understand that this is not kind of, the world where small countries can be equal with big countries or big players. It is quite clear. But at least, if we pretend that there is a place which unites us, which puts us together to discuss these issues, then we should give some more, how to say that, honor or some more credibility to that institution, and all of us should be included in that. And yes, yesterday I attended a panel, and it was basically an interview by Russian Minister of Foreign Affairs, and I known him for many years, So I wanted to hear actually his perspectives on many of these issues. And finally, about the title, about the one which you titled here on this panel, And I would prefer to stick to this title. It's okay.
I know. I asked you.
And also, when you mentioned this, MAGA made America great again. In the way you mentioned that, I would say that actually I have nothing against make America great again. If it is really great and strong internally, and if it is fair and just externally. This is something which we advocate in my region, and to be honest, I have no problems with this. I promote the concept where we should build strong nations so that these strong nations can build strong relations with other nations, But if it is something that you are going to build your country to the detriment of others, this is something I do not advocate. But you come from a big country. I have from a complicated country, which has 3-member presidency, so which by itself speaks about how difficult it is sometimes to navigate, all these problems and reach a good solution. But we shouldn't give up trying, and we shouldn't give up looking for something which would be stable environment and stable solution.
Well, what I love about this panel is when you think there are 190 nations in the world, not everyone is a Brazil or an India or a United States or a China, but there's still voice, there's still action, there's still conscience, there's still spotlight. And one of my favorite countries, Mr. President, is your country, the Dominican Republic. I've loved it. I was telling you when I was last there. And you're kind of an oasis of stability and sanity in my perspective there. But you've got Haiti right next door, very, very close, of course, and a kind of a gang-infested security situation there. You have Cuba imploding your neighborhood. But I know largely the DR is in pretty good shape. But when we talk about Ukraine-Russia, or you see, like at the beginning of the Doha Forum, 6 injured journalists who came here, from injured, doing their job in Gaza, doing their job in Lebanon. We're talking about Sergei Lavrov in Russia, Ukraine. As you're sitting in the Dominican Republic, can you just say, hey, that's the rest of the world's problem? How do you look at those? Do your people feel connected to the global crises that are going on at all?
Let me tell you a story about Ukraine and Russia. When the war started in February 22, one of the last planes that came to Kiev was from Punta Cana. Tourists from Ukraine going to Dominican Republic. We had 40,000 tourists from Russia and 8,000 tourists from Ukraine per month.
Wow.
That far away from Dominican Republic. So everything affects us. Yes, we are, as you said, we are growing. We are the fastest growing economy in Latin America at 5%, except Guyana, our friend, because of the situation of the hydrocarbons and the discovery. So we have inflation under control. We have tourism. We are going to receive now this year more than 11 million visitors. This the end of 2024, just passing Mexico in Latin America.
How many from Qatar?
Excuse me?
How many from Qatar?
From
Qatar.
From Qatar. No, there are not many, but there are going to be a lot.
Okay.
When we have direct flights from Qatar Airways, soon enough. And
are you announcing that as a
no,
negotiated deal?
No. I am trying to do that. That's my wish. That's my wish. But here
I
in
think
Qatar,
the CEO of Qatar Airways may be here, so he can see you after in the back.
He's hitting me.
Okay.
He knows that. And we will do it. But and the tourism is growing. We have industrial. The free zones are also growing. We have exports. Our exports are at record levels in every way. Every cigar that you have here is from Dominican Republic, the best cigars in the world. And we have a very diversified economy. And
but you also get a lot of hurricanes there and climate change.
Some hurricane, some hurricane. But not when you are on vacation. When you're on vacation, they don't go. So we are doing well. But we care about Haiti. We care about Haiti. And we call the international community also to help. In 2021, on the United Nations speech, I said that we were seeing Haiti, after the assassination of President Moïse, going into the Somalization of Haiti because of the gangs divided by areas. And we call a lot about the international community. Finally, Kenya gave its help, but we still need more help from the international community. So you have more police from Kenya to control the situation. You have to control and to get peace into Haiti, and later on to have a development plan for Haiti. They can have election, and they can flourish a democracy, and also that could help for their development.
Do you think the UN deserves praise or criticism? We have somebody big from the UN coming up in a minute. So do you want to send a message?
I think that the international community and the friends of Haiti, that they know who they are, should be more aligned to help Haiti. We have approximately 40% of our maternity beds are occupied by Haitians, 16% of all our health system, and around 12% of our school system. So we are doing a lot for that. and also a lot of Haitians are working in the DR. But we need the international community to help Haiti. Is not really that Haiti is in that situation, just 1 hour and 45 minutes from Florida. I think that should be taken into consideration, and especially from the human point of view. All these children who has been affected by the war, the woman, all the assassination, and all what these gangs are doing to innocent Haitians, boys and girls and citizens. So that's something that I have been very vocal in the last 3 years, and we will continue to be.
Right. Mr. Prime Minister, I remember the Doha Forum when the Arab Spring had started and was well underway, and we had meetings and we saw, and Egypt was such a center of that. And I want to remind people that one of the big concerns, and you know, I have my own friendly criticisms of President Sisi and authoritarian governments, I have that, but at the same time, the bigger worry people had is, wow, Egypt's economy, if it's not growing, if it's not dynamic, is going to become a source of instability. And I just want to give you an opportunity, because I sort of unfairly came at you early on the foreign policy issues, but your job has really been to liberalize, to help open up, to revitalize the Egyptian economy. And my sense is you've made progress that people were surprised by. How is that going?
Of course, Egypt has been able since 2014 to adapt, I can say, revolutionary and radical reform measures in our economy, and the whole principles of really how to boost the growth of your economy, availing more and more the private sector to contribute to the overall investment and developing, encouraging FDIs to come and step in your country. But to really apply this, we have to make for us really radical decision in reforming the subsidy, the long legacy of subsidies that has been embedded in our country, to make radical changes in our laws and regulation and institutional setup, and of course make the whole investment climate conducive to a private sector. But here you are working in not business as usual environment. You are working in a very turbulent and unstable circumstances. You cannot now predict, any politicians now cannot predict what will happen next month. I'm not going to say for years. I'm speaking about the coming few months, not even few months, weeks, as what we have witnessed within the last week, for example, in Syria and the other countries. So it's really, it's not that easy to really implement all the reforms with this turbulence. I will give you...
But let me ask you a question about this.
Okay.
Does the military is such a huge part of the Egyptian economy, and as you're liberalizing, beginning to figure out how you're liberalizing capital markets, is a measure of your success going to be shrinking that footprint of the military economy inside Egypt?
Okay, it's not that large as it has been perceived or anticipated. But even
so you've
now,
already succeeded?
Yes,
I'm just
yes,
joking.
and we are succeeding. And let me tell you something. We have already announced what we call it state ownership policy since less than 2 years. And since that date, we started to apply it in how the state is exiting from a lot of economic activities and how it is promoting the private sector to step more and more in the economic sectors and have what we can call it fair competitiveness with the states. So all of this is now taking place. And this is, I think, what has contributed that Egypt till this moment, with all the turbulence that we are having, is surviving. And the country now, if you were speaking about unemployment, it's 6.5%. 10 years ago, it was 13.5%. And let me tell you something. Within this 10 years, we have grown with 25 million new inhabitants. So we can imagine the challenge that this country is now facing with really trying to boost the economy, availing jobs for, on annual basis, we are receiving 1 million newcomers to the employment market. It's really, it's almost could be a mission impossible, but even though the country has been able to provide all of these jobs and boosting the economy. I will end up with some comment. Believe a country that all its border from all the direction, they are set on fire and wars. Libya, Sudan, now Gaza and Israel, and even this is the first tier, look at the second tier and what is happening. So it's really what we have been able to perform so far. I think it's a good achievement, but of course we are looking for more and more in the coming period.
Well, you know, I was talking to Amr Musa, who's out here in the audience, I think somewhere, and Amr Musa is never that optimistic about anything, and he never offers false praise, but he said very nice things about your economic work. I just wanted to tell you, so I really value Amr Musa's perspective. But let me come back to Madam President and sort of ask another question about the global system. And I'm fascinated by certain countries. Egypt can be one, but it became stuck in a vice for a while that it's working out of. Some nations make their own weather, and some become victims of weather made by other countries. And I'm interested as you see, some of the evolution of the BRICS, for instance. There's been a lot of discussion about China, Russia, and a response and alternative to a transatlantic dominated global economy system. I'm just interested in whether you think it's necessary from your perspective that alternatives to a global financial order right now dominated by the United States and Europe needs to be challenged in some part, and whether that would be healthy or unhealthy from your perspective.
It doesn't necessarily mean that we need to look for alternatives. I'm very happy that we are going to have opportunity to hear from someone who is a UN top official to tell us actually what the UN is going to do in the future times, and we are all interested in that. And when I criticize, some of the practices within the UN, it is with the intention actually to say that it is necessary to improve these practices and it is necessary to return credibility to the institution. I'm not speaking about whether there's going to be alternative or not, because it will depend on many other issues. Not even this forum and many other fora cannot actually give proper answer to that. But obviously there are changes in the world.
What would be the biggest reform that you'd like to see?
But obviously there are changes in this in the world, obviously, and there are a lot of security threats and a lot of economic threats. So obviously the world is changing, and it's not something that we learn from the books. It is something which happens in front of our eyes. So we are witnessing that. How it's going to end up, this process, I don't know, and no one knows at this moment, but we hope actually that it's going to be a peaceful transition into something else, some other system. But when I say that actually there should be more credibility within the UN, it is because of many of these issues that we mentioned here. For instance, every conflict, or nearly every conflict, has something to do with the failure to respect or implement international law. Be it like situation internally, like in Bosnia and Herzegovina, we always have problems when it comes to the failure to implement Dayton Agreement, which is actually basis for functioning of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Or whenever we have the attempts to twist it, to interpret that, instead of implement that, we always have problems. Bosnia acts as a colony nowadays, and you wouldn't believe that, because, apart from Dayton Agreement envisaged, we have one individual who is a foreigner, who is not elected by our population in Bosnia and Herzegovina, who actually claims for himself to have the right to impose pieces of legislation. We have our parliament, so our parliaments are those who are entitled to pass laws. And what is the audience to hear that? Is it the UN? Very often I address the UN Security Council actually 2-3 times to say that it is not normal that you have kind of parliamentary system, that you have democracy, and that you have a person who is there based on Dayton Agreement, but an extent of Dayton Agreement says clearly how that person can be appointed and how what that person can do. And that person acts beyond this.
Right, so you want,
sorry,
you
this
want
is
the
one
UN
of the.
To be better.
So now we speak about some of the. You just said quite okay, like it's true. What are the root problems for the situations that we are dealing now? No one wants to speak about root problems. We speak about consequences. And then in consequences, people are taking sides. So it's not about taking sides. It's about tackling problems so that we do not have to take sides. And, this is my approach. And I think that, the UN should be revitalized. If it wants to have proper role in the future, it needs to become completely different forum, you know, with a lot of credibility and a lot of activity that is going to yield some results. Otherwise, we will be stuck, like, you know, and today we are stuck. We are stuck, definitely it is the case. When we speak about double standards, this is also something which holds good for my country.
Right.
I can see so many examples when something is required from my country, but it is not required for others.
Right.
Something is forbidden to us and it is allowed to others. So we need to kind of, you know, harmonize these practices.
So in your gut, Madam President, is it going the right direction or is it getting worse? Because, you know, the reason I asked about the BRICS question, but I love the fact you're talking about the UN, is you in this forum, if you talk to people on the sidelines, you see institutional anguish.
But I think that it's important to have, so I appreciate every forum where people can discuss economy and security.
Yeah.
Whatever the name of that forum and whatever the number of
Yeah.
states and the name of the states that are gathered together within such fora.
Right.
You know. So I appreciate that because my understanding is, maybe naive, but you know, not that naive, that it also gives you opportunity to think what to do security-wise and economy-wise. Whether you are going to compete with someone else is completely different thing, you know, but they are competing, you know, in many aspects, definitely.
President Abinader, I would love to ask you a similar kind of question about institutions and whether they're up to the task. So as we're thinking about this tension between cooperation and a fragmenting world, coming back to that meta theme of innovation, right? It sounds good, but it's awfully hard sometimes. I'm just interested in your perspective as a major stakeholder in these institutions. Do we need to go back to the drawing board on a number of them? Do we need to revise them? Do we need to improve the UN? Do we need to either shelve the BRICS or applaud the BRICS? Your view.
I will come to a question. Is this the same world as it was 20 years ago?
I don't think so.
Is it the same world as it was 4 years ago? So we have the same institution. So we have to update this institution to this new world. And that's really as we have to update any organization or any institution. We have to update that on the Organization of American States in America. We have to update also the United Nations in every way. It's a different world. In some parts, it's a complete different world. So we have to update our organizations. I think that's what it has to be done soon. And if we do it as soon as and as quick as we do it, we will maybe we can prevent conflicts, we can prevent world. But we have to adapt these organizations to this new world.
How would you do it? What would be the Dominican Republic plan?
We don't have that power, Steve, to change this organization.
I'll tell you, you may not see it, but I was talking, you know, I name drop now and then, it's a Washington thing, but I was talking to Carlos Gutierrez, a former Commerce Secretary, and Carla Hills, a former U.S. Trade Representative from the Reagan days and Bush days, and I told them I was at the Doha Forum, and they both said, wow, Doha, the Doha round of trade and the WTO, and they both talked to me about how important Doha was ages ago as a platform for building very key international economic platform. And so it's interesting sometimes that a small nation can have a huge impact far beyond its weight.
No, and we will try to do it. We will speak about that. We have been speaking about that this institution adapt to the new world and adapt to the new conflicts, adapt to the new situations that we have. We will continue to do it. We will continue to try to press on that direction. We are in the middle of ideologies in our region, not to the right, not to the left. We are at the center, and then we can also approach and we can go to every side in order to try to all advance. And we have done that, and we will continue to do it.
Before I jump to the Prime Minister again, I was not only joking about hurricanes, I was using them as a metaphor that many people have about worry about climate change. So again, when you come back to this question of fragmentation and needing common purpose to deal with these issues, one would think you're doing it. I worry that that intensity of purpose is falling apart. And I'm wondering what a hotter world that's not serious about climate change does to your part of the world.
Yes, but when we speak about climate change, there is very few I can do to stop the climate change. But there is a lot I have to do to prevent from climate change, because we are the one that the island states is the one has been more affected. And we have been working on that. We have been trying to prevent any more suffering from what we have been seeing on the climate.
Right.
You see that in 2 days, there is more rains than it was supposed to be in 6 months. And we are having that now. It's not if it's going to change to come the climate change.
So are you worried about less intensive collective action?
Less intensive?
Less intensive global cooperation.
I think everybody's talking about climate change, but I don't know if all that speaking it comes into action.
Right.
One of the things is that the developed world has not get the amount of money that is needed to really apply to climate change, and not even some countries are willing to regulate their industry to affect climate change.
Right. Mr. Prime Minister, I'd love to get your quick thoughts, both of you. We've got about 2.5 minutes left, so a minute each, on this climate question. And you look at the 30 least resource countries in the world, and they're not having capital inflows. They're having capital outflows from those countries. There's no way they can invest in this. And as a leader, as someone who knows intimately so much of the leadership in those countries, should we have our hair on fire? Should we be really angry and upset about what's happening, about the inequities in climate, and should, as opposed to saying, hey, let's call for cooperation, let's call for immediate action?
Yes, you are totally right, Steve. Let me just give you a number. Egypt is part from Africa, the African continent. Yes. And the whole African continent, its contribution to global warming is less than 3%. Less than 3%. But now, with all the commitments that it is being now put on all the countries, Africa need at least 2.5 to 3 trillion US dollar to adapt to the measures and the objective of 1.5 degree less. Right. From where they are going to get all of this money to finance this needed and urgent projects to contribute to the climate finance? I will give you this number. We have been listening to the idea that the developed world will commit with 100 billion US dollar annually to contribute to this climate change things. Nothing has been, nothing serious has been implemented.
Absolutely.
And even the last COP in Azerbaijan, they started to revisit the whole target to see how it will be applicable and try to force the developing countries to seek their own resources to contribute. This is totally unfair.
Right.
And without a very clear concessional finance to such kind of countries, nobody will be able to finance such kind of board schemes.
Madam President, I'm going to give you the last minute and last word.
It's one of the issues, definitely. I need international intervention or international solidarity actually to deal with the issues, but international action also when it comes to climate change. But as you said, also it requires finances, and these finances cannot be obtained like individually within one country. So, okay, as I said, some of these global issues and things and organizations, this is something which require kind of to underway serious reform in order to be able to give proper answers to all these challenges. And let me at the very end thank our host, Qatar, for the great opportunity to be here and also for this Doha Forum. I think this is also a very good tool actually to send a message across and to show actually what we think about so many important issues. Thank you once again.
Well, thank you. And I want to say, when they said, Steve, hey, would you like to have a conversation with the heads of government of Dominican Republic, Bosnia, Herzegovina, and Egypt? I said, wow, fascinating, once-in-a-lifetime experience to get 3 incredible countries from 3 different zones in the world to talk in real terms about the fragmentation that's going on, and not to be gauzy-eyed about cooperation, but to talk about it in pragmatic, tactical terms, and I think there could have been no better final panel, in my view, than the one we had hearing from real governments struggling with real issues. So please give a round of applause to His Excellency Luis Abinader, President of the Dominican Republic, Her Excellency Željka Cvijanović, Chair of the Presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Mustafa Madbouli, Prime Minister, Republic of Egypt. Thank you all so much for your candor and creativity. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve, for moderating this final session of the Doha Forum and making it as interesting as we all anticipated. Thank you as well to President Abinader, President Cvijanović, and Prime Minister Madbouli. A fascinating insight into very different countries and regions, each trying to navigate through their own dynamics and changes, but all with a common interest in creating a more robust but democratic and effective global system that isn't stuck in the power structures of the past, one that is forward-looking and innovative. Now, for years, if not decades, there have been calls for United Nations reform. But the big question is, and has been for a long time, can the one organization that purports to represent us all live up to that ideal? Can it ever break free from the shackles of the past, its structures, but also its mechanisms that were designed to represent the world as it was back in 1945, not as it is today in 2024? In a nutshell, is the United Nations beyond repair, to put it bluntly, or can it still change as it inches closer to 80? Can we reinvent the UN, or must we continue to accept it with all of its flaws and inequalities?